We're talking about vulnerable courage. We're talking about taking that safe plunge. We're talking about being open to the world. And I want to talk to you about why it is that important and why we have that urge to be vulnerable, because actually it is not necessarily in our nature, but it is quite an evolutionary tool that we have developed as humans because of what we went through as a race and also what we are dealing with right now. Who am I? You might not know me yet. I am Anna, and I'm communication facilitator for ethical leaders. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I'm a speaker and an author. I have a book called Blissful, a guidebook for growing humans, which has in itself been a very vulnerable experience for me. Apart from writing the book itself, which is great exercise of your creativity, but also humbleness and of course vulnerability. Also all the things around publishing the book, self-publishing in my case, have been really an interesting journey. Recommend it, absolutely. Now, in terms of official recognition of the word, vulnerability is the quality of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed. Here we're talking about your actual presence in the world being exposed to the possibility. I know there is a lot of words, but vulnerability doesn't necessarily mean that harm or attack. It is the exposure to the possibility of it. This is where it is important to have a bit of a distinction between the danger, right, the actual real danger, and vulnerability. Both of them are, they kind of part of each other, but they're not the same. This is where I wanted to clearly have this distinction before we dive into how to be vulnerable. Because vulnerability, as of now, as of today, in today's world, is a lot about that the exposure of weak spots, right? That are leaving the door open to harm, to the attack. And this is what we have in our heads, which is technically true, but there is a big difference between being vulnerable and being in danger. When you're looking at this cute little bird is vulnerable, yes. And it's probably one of these images that you have in your head when you're thinking about vulnerability. Well, I'm completely exposed to all the different things that can happen in the world. And this bird can be swayed so easily, not even by predators, but even the wind or something. It is very, very tender. And this is how vulnerability feels if you don't approach it with certain, preparation. Now, the danger is again the possibility of harm or death. It is more precise. The result is the actual harm, physical harm, emotional harm, even death. And this is where vulnerability is slightly different. Now, as we saw the little bird, the bird is in danger, right? Basically in danger. But the lion here is vulnerable. But can you actually say that the lion is in danger? Whatever happens to the lion, if he needs to wake up, he's ready in a second, in a millisecond. His instincts are sharp. The lion, while exposing his underbelly, is vulnerable. He's not in danger unless, of course, we're talking about some probably man-made danger. In the real life of the lion, he's not really that much in danger because his claws, his teeth, everything, his superpower, his this power, even if he sleeps 20 hours a day, he's all about, vulnerable courage in a way. Now, so that means that vulnerability is not really danger, it's the exposure to danger, right? If we want to wrap it up this way, danger is a part of vulnerability, but it's not really the vulnerability itself. If you are prepared, you're vulnerable, yes, but you're not much in danger. And we will talk about what that means. Your vulnerability conditions the danger, whether you are approaching it or not. Brené Brown, the guru of vulnerability, as we know, says the definition of vulnerability is, of course, uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, but it is not weakness. It shows our courage. It shows the readiness to danger. It's showing readiness to that emotional or exposure and risk and uncertainty. And in my opinion, intentional vulnerability, the one that doesn't expose the weakness, happens only when we are prepared, when we are reinforced, and when we are secure. Today, I want to talk about how to be prepared to be vulnerable, because otherwise you're just in danger, you're putting yourself in danger, you're basically stupid and unprepared. And you don't want that. You don't want to feel like that. You don't want people to see you like that. You don't want people to use your vulnerability against you. Think about the monk, right? A monk who has trained his mind and his body to basically be present in the world and serve the world. He's vulnerable, but he's also really much open to the world. And whenever there is necessity to protect his mind or body, he will be there fully present. Think about yourself more in that vulnerability as a monk who has all the necessary tools to protect him or herself. Why do we actually desire to open up? This is an interesting thing that I noticed when I was talking to people who asked me the questions about my own vulnerability and how I managed to be so open and so vulnerable in the world and my social media and all the things that I share with the people. I've never thought about that much. Like how do I manage? How do I dare? How do I, make it look so easy? Or how do I be so kind and open to the world? And of course, I have to learn so much still about that. But people actually do want to be present like that themselves. And they want to see other people present like that themselves. And my own experience shows that vulnerability is, of course, a lot about power. Think about that lion. It's, of course, a lot about courage. It's a lot about self-knowledge. You can't be vulnerable unless you are very practically and very objectively assessing your own capabilities. Otherwise, once again, you're putting yourself in danger, and kind of uncalculated danger. Vulnerability, of course, means creating a safe space and being in a safe space. You both create the safe space for others by being vulnerable, right? Like showing your underbelly. You are not going to be in danger, and you're not going to endanger people if you are showing the underbelly. You are actually welcoming them to show theirs. But you're also very sure about the space that you're showing that underbelly, right? You're not going to do it in the middle of a chaos. You're not going to be showing challenges or pains that you're going through in a space that requires you to actually buckle up and be present with the people around you. Of course, it's not pretending. It's no masks. It's very open honesty. It is being there. It is saying things as you mean them and being present with the people, with your feelings, with your intentions, with your fears and your desires and needs. And do you think that our businesses and the families and people around us, the teams that we lead, and even ourselves, do we actually need to be more courageous in opening up? Do we need to open up? Do we need more courage? I know it is a question that doesn't need that kind of answer. You know it for yourself. We do need to be more present with ourselves, and this can only be reached by being vulnerable. What does vulnerability ask of us? It is not easy. And that's why it's so compelling. People that manage to do that are really, really attractive. They are attractive by the ways they are showing up in the world, by the way they lead their businesses, by the way they guide their teams, by the way they are showing up in their own lives. Vulnerability is a lot to ask, and it's a lot to do, and it's difficult. It needs discipline. It needs optimism. It needs to take you to take radical responsibility. And of course, it needs love and care. So let's discuss all of that. Discipline is, as the meaning of the word says, it is an acquired quality of getting things done. It is your actual presence in your own life. Every day you show up, whether you like it or not, you do the thing that you need to do. You take it piece by piece, right? Like how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one step at a time, one bite at a time. And the results are built up over time. You cannot really see the results right away, but you have the faith, or actually that optimism, right? That is helping you get through before you see the result. And then as you see the result, you continue going with that discipline. And sometimes you can do much more in a day. Sometimes you can do the bare minimum. This is where I also talk in my other conversations. I talked about the bare minimum and the minimum viable action that you can take every day to do something for the world. So for me, I always meditate every day, and I always write a post on LinkedIn on weekdays, which means that I am building up that discipline of showing up for myself, for my own mental health, because I am responsible for many things and many people in my life. And I am also present in my business as my personal brand in the world, sharing the things that happen with me, things that I need to share with people, that I feel I need to share with people. Now, optimism is believing in something before you actually see it. It is sometimes a bit, idiotic to people. How can you be so optimistic about things that seem so dire and difficult? It is a choice. Actually, it is a choice. It's a constant choice, because being pessimistic is an absence of choice. You decide not to do that, and you decide not to be optimistic. You decide once and for all that I'm not going to make an effort. Optimism is an effort. Optimism is going against the odds. And optimism here in vulnerability is a lot about, I am ready for all the different things that are going to happen to me. And I know that even if I am in pain today or tomorrow or next month, it will be beneficial for me. This is also a lot about how you approach life. Radical responsibility is the result of you taking charge of your own life. It is you knowing and deciding that everything that you have in your life is a result of your own decisions, whether you knew that or not. Some of the things we decide are really conditioned by many things in our life, but by our upbringing, by the situation that we're in, by our own limitations or our own dreams and desires. We see certain things in our lives according to the condition that we have in it. Yet, it is our life. It is our presence in our lives. When you take a decision, whether you're very clear on it or not, it is your responsibility, not no one else's. Even if we can talk about, how we have been conditioned and what we grew up with, it would do you more good if you see everything in the world as the direct response to your own presence in the world. And therefore, it gives you actually all the necessary tools to change things if you want to. So it goes both ways. Your responsibility for the past, but also your own responsibility for the future. And it does have to do a lot with vulnerability, because you decide to be responsible for your own vulnerable presence. And love, what I mean by that is gratitude, is generosity. It's being thankful for everything that has been and is yet to come, because that gives you the meaning of the experiences. And as you want to be more vulnerable, you want to be more present and open and courageous, that is a lot about caring for other people. That is a lot about showing them what you have been through so they can learn from you and from your experience. It is a lot about being generous with your support and help to the people in need as you are sharing your own difficulties. So that's a lot about that universal love and gratitude for me. Which brings you to the point where you are very clear that you're right where you need to be with everything that you have lived through, with all the experiences that you've had, all the challenges and all the beauty of your life. It can be useful for someone else. And this is what the vulnerability is for me. I'm showing you my underbelly so that you can understand what I went through. And I am very clear and very present in it in myself because I know that that experience has been useful for me. And if I'm just that one person, I can encourage you to be vulnerable in your own life. And I can also hopefully can help you with my experience if that speaks to you. And now, what does that vulnerability give us? What does it actually help us with? What kind of amazing opportunities does it show us? It is both freedom and safety. It is both about being more you, more present, more open, living the life that is uniquely yours because you are acknowledging everything that has happened and you're taking that responsibility, and therefore you have that freedom to either change things or keep going the same way because you're not conditioned by anyone else. And also safety. And this is something that I would never expect from being vulnerable for myself, because I would never expect so many people to hold me, to be there with me, for me, as I was vulnerable with them, as I was opening up, as I was crying, as I was sharing all the different things that I have gone through. And trust me, there's been a bit. I never expected random people showing up at my DM saying, I appreciated so much what you talked about there in that post, in that conversation, in that webinar, because I have been through something like that. And this is what helped me. It might be a solution that you're looking for, or it might be a conversation that you want to start finally, or it might be just support. Just last week, I had an amazing conversation with a person that I would never expect to have something like that. But I showed up not feeling really great because of some challenges that I'm going through right now. And that person gave me the space to be me. And we just talked about our challenges. And we supported each other. And we were there for each other. And at the end of it, that conversation lasted twice as long as it was supposed to. We decided to keep talking and we felt better. We felt more empowered, and I could see it in her eyes and I felt it myself. Vulnerability equals courage and confidence. And all these three concepts, they are part of each other. They influence each other. They feed on each other. The more I'm open, the more I'm courageous to be open. And the more it gives me the confidence to keep going, to be me, to take on difficult tasks, to see that light, that will give me more opportunities. And of course, as we need confidence in any aspects of our lives, this is where it is so crucial to actually be open, to allow yourself to be open. Because right now, we're going through so much. We're going through, war and social unrest and all the crisis and the recession and covid is still here. Of course, there's so much that we have lost, so much that has been going on. I am personally not interested anymore in seeing all that polished feeds that I have with everyone just doing great, because I'm not doing great, because there's so many things that I need to deal with that I feel like I'm alone in this world, and it's not true, because many people are suffering, going through challenges, and it's not about suffering and crying and going in the fetus position and not getting up anymore. It's a lot about holding each other's hands. It's a lot about taking that challenge of supporting someone else, being present for someone else as well, which is, in my opinion, so important for leaders, for entrepreneurs, for managers, for people with friends and families. For ourselves, we need to be also that person for ourselves, to both accept the challenge and to know that we can handle it. It is both that freedom and safety. So what does that mean practically? Yeah, vulnerable. What does that actually mean? I have discovered some of the things myself as I decided. I didn't really decide like vulnerable, click. This is what I want to have in my life. I decided to be more me. I decided to actually express things that I have been going through as a leader, as a person, as a professional, as an immigrant, someone whose country is now in shambles, all the different things with the people, and someone will listen. Someone will go through similar things. Someone will have similar challenges. These are some of the rules that I've decided for myself to have that might be useful for you. Share the challenge, share what you're going through, and of course share what you've learned. Don't just cry around asking for support. Share what you've learned, and it might require some of the hindsight, so give yourself time to understand what you're going through. Remember, you're in the right place at the right time. Everything that has happened for a reason, even if it is very woo-woo for you or very philosophical. You can remember some of the things that happened to you, and they have been challenging, but something great came out of it. Everyone has that story. Keep that in mind whenever you are sharing something about difficulty that you have gone through. Give away knowledge and support for free, easily. Let it flow. Everyone needs that support. And the great thing is that the more you share of yourself with the world, the more world wants to share with you. I've seen it. I've been there. People really want to be part of that conversation, of something deeper, something more meaningful, something more, honest. Talk about what bothers and triggers and upsets you, but of course, what also makes you joyful. It's easier, maybe, to talk about the negative parts, but we also need that vulnerability in joy. We also need to be vulnerable when we're talking about things that makes us feel good, because actually I don't know if you noticed, but there is a lot of hate and pessimism in the world, and some people that are in pain are not going to be very receptive to your joy. And I'm talking about that from my own perspective. When at the end of February the whole big painful war started in Ukraine, which is the country I'm from, I, for several weeks, and still, I wasn't able to comprehend how it is possible to see both the cruelty of the world and the beauty of it. People traveling, people eating out, people, just sharing their experiences and being happy. I was not able to do that. I was very much in pain myself, and I was bitter. I will admit to that. Whenever I had some challenges, it was really difficult for me to accept that someone else can have it all figured out at this moment. It is also a lot about you being very open with your own joy for the people. And you admit of not knowing it all. You admit of not being present with your whole self sometimes. You admit to not being very, clear on what is going on. You admit of not being, I'm not sure what's happening, but I will keep going. this, of course, gives a lot of space to other people to feel the same way, because no one is really sure what they're doing. Maybe one aspect of their life or two or three are figured out, but somewhere else there is a lot of chaos. When you give away spotlight, this is also something that shows a lot of your humbleness and shows a lot of courage as well, because you're not taking up all the space, and you don't have to. You shouldn't, especially as a leader, especially as an entrepreneur. When you give away spotlight, you again show that vulnerable part of you, that you are not really that interested in taking it all for yourself. You're a lot about sharing. And whereas sharing might mean less for everyone in some cases, but not all of them, it's a lot about multiplying as well, much more about multiplying. Now, one of the important things that I discovered for myself is to let go of that ego. Of course, when you're talking about things that are personal and challenging and they are very important for you, you're talking from your own perspective. You're talking from your own knowledge and from your expertise and from your experience. But one important thing is to actually shift that focus to what of what I'm saying needs to be said. What is my role here as the deliverer of that message? What is the outcome I want for people to have? Do I want them to feel sad and miserable about what I'm showing and sharing? Or do I want for them to feel empowered and inspired and free and held? Do I want them to feel safe? So that is a very important question to ask before you start sharing anything, before you open the gates and let it all flow. And one very important thing is also that you take that responsibility to show the vulnerability only for yourself, and show only what is you're confident in. Because if you're talking about other people and their challenges and their struggles, you're a bit of a jerk, because you didn't get that permission to make other people vulnerable. This is where you're putting them in danger. This is where, when you are sure, this is what I can talk to. Like, I can talk openly about, Ukraine, or I can talk openly about my debt that I struggled with before, or I can talk openly about my divorce. But I will not talk about vulnerabilities of other people in my life, because they didn't give me that permission. Choose very wisely what you are talking about, and do it only for yourself, only about yourself. And with that, I'm concluding this session. I am very thankful for the opportunity to talk about that. And I know that it's so easy for me to just set this event and be online and make these slides and talk about things. But I also wanted to thank you for the time, because you are here giving me the time. You're giving me this opportunity to speak to at least one person. And even if that one person may be just me, I am really grateful for your desire and your wish to be more you, to live your life which is more yours, is not conditioned by other people's desires and needs. And I really wish you to be more open, to show up more honestly, and to, of course, be free and safe and held by others.